I can honestly say this whole time with everybody who we picked for all of our topics this week, they're all different,
Oh
which I
wow.
think might be a first in our history. So
The-
I'll go ahead and get the show started off with I had the Jets being the worst team or the best team draft.
Best team. Really?
That hurt my heart to
I'm
say.
surprised.
That
Wow.
that hurt my heart to say, but I just had to go with who the Jets picked. I mean,
All of a sudden you're a Zach Wilson fan.
well, this is the way that I looked at it. Besides, yeah, well, yeah, the Zach Wilson fan. You got
They
jokes.
met a need, right?
Yeah, so I looked. That's exactly how I looked at it. It was just who had a need. Well, who filled their needs the best in this draft, and
Right.
I don't want to go by who filled it the best or whatever. I don't want to go by. I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't want to go by that Zach Wilson was the worst quarterback that we thought in the draft, and that wherever he fell, he was just going to be bad. I went by looking at the depth chart, looking at where they failed as far as stats, and who they needed to fill some gaps that they didn't fill in free agency, right? And I think the Jets came and surprised me with a lot of their picks. Zach Wilson, of course, they needed a quarterback that got rid of Sam Darnold. Elijah Vera Tucker, who Rob was really high
Right.
on,
I was. Put him in my
and they
top
needed
10.
a guard badly. Elijah Moore, they needed a receiver. They really don't have a number one receiver out there since they got rid of Robbie Anderson. Michael Carter, have somebody come in and help Frank Gore out.
Yeah.
So actually they drafted both Michael Carters, the safety from Duke too. So got a Tar Heels guy and a Duke guy there. And then actually picked up my boy Hamza Nisardine from Florida State. Picked up a cornerback they needed. They got two corners. They got I believe they got three safeties in the draft this year. No, it was three corners and two safeties. And then just to cap it off, with their second round six pick, it was Jonathan Marshall, defensive tackle out of Arkansas. So overall, I think they filled the gaps where they needed to fill. I don't think it was the Dolphins draft from last year, but I don't think we can disagree at all with our three picks. Like they were in, like I said before, they're interchangeable like Legos, right? So
Right.
I think, to me personally, with all the team needs that they needed, not necessarily looking at the caliber of players that they got, but plugging in a guard, a couple of cornerbacks, some safeties. They're hurting in a lot of different areas, but I think the most important areas they went and plugged and play, and they got themselves some good picks. So, Don, you were the next one up.
Yeah, I went with the LA Chargers. Um, Kind of funny. I kind of did a little bit of the who filled a need, but I actually got away a little bit from the numbers and went with the players that we talked about, players that I really liked that I think are going to make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I chose these guys. They started off with Rashawn Slater, second best tackle, blindside protector. Some people had him as the best tackle. A huge benefit to the team to protect the quarterback. Then they pick up at corner Asante Samuel Jr., somebody with great technique, crowds of receivers. It's like, man, fantastic. I was hoping, the Eagles might pick him up at some point early on, but they didn't. Their next two picks were more depth picks, not anything to really get excited. Wide receiver Josh Palmer. Trey McKitty was a little bit of a reach at tight end. I know they're trying to get some depth there with Hunter Henry gone. But then when they grabbed Chris Rumpf, the linebacker, I was like, yes, that's what sold it to me right there.
Mm-hmm.
I like this kid, pass rusher, put him with Bosa. Can you imagine the intensity? And this kid has great lateral movement. A year close to Bosa this year, maybe, and then maybe split him out to the other side next year once he's had a year under his belt. They're going to look tremendous.
So, yeah, like I said, interchangeable like Legos here. I think with the Rashawn Slater pick, that was probably the most obvious pick in the draft. This is the pick that the Bengals should have drafted for Penei Sewell, right? It should have been almost interchangeable like that.
Right.
They bring a guy, Rashawn Slater, who did sit out last year, like Penei Sewell, and now you're just you're giving the confidence to, your boy a quarterback to have him believe that the system is really garnered to help him.
Yep.
So yeah, not a bad pick. Asante Samuel, we'll get into that a little later, but for people to say that J.C. Horn is better than Asante Samuel is absolutely ridiculous. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a Florida State fan. Asante Samuel throughout his career had a 56% quarterback rating against him when they threw to his side. He was dominant. And he was like ranked number 2 next to Patrick Surtain in breaking up contested catches his whole career. I mean, just go watch the tape on we'll get into that a little later, but just go watch the tape on J.C. Horn against Auburn and tell me how weird that is. And then Rob.
Yeah, so Miami won the draft last year. I gave it to them again this year. They had a heck of a draft.
Yes, they did.
I'm going down their board. They were a 10-win team last year. They drafted possibly 4 starters off of this board. I mean, Jalen Waddle, obviously, they picked him over Smith. That the whole league is going nuts over the Eagles getting Devontae Smith. But Jalen Waddle played on the same team as him and got picked ahead of him. I mean, he's clearly a talent. He's going to be a starting receiver there for years.
Mm-hmm.
Jalen Phillips is, a skilled pass rusher. He's had some medical history. He actually had to retire from UCLA because of concussion issues, took a year off and came back to Miami. But he's a guy that I think could play probably all 7 positions in the front 7 and rush the passer from pretty much everywhere. We'll see how it translates to the next level, but he'll get rotation time at the next level. Javon Holland, the safety out of Oregon, everybody was up on the TCU safety, but he led Oregon as a true freshman in picks in 18, and then led the team again in 19 before opting out for the 2020 season. So he's another guy that could get rotated in at safety there. That he might not start right away, but he could see time. And then obviously the last one is their the new right tackle from Notre Dame. What's his face? Eichenberg. And so, I mean, looking down the list, they didn't have a ton of picks. I think they only had like 7 or 8 picks, but they were all super high quality that I feel like they've got depth pieces, but they've got 4 potential starters within the next year or two out of this draft class, which was just really impressive for a 10-win team to pull that all together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to mention all the maneuvering they did. I feel like they outmaneuvered a lot of teams, moving up and down to wind up with that 6th pick.
And like I said, again, these teams are interchangeable like Legos, but I'm gonna tell you which team it was really hard for me not to put. And we have a fan of this team, and it's not because of his influence of spending the weekend with them. But the Panthers really drafted really good. They just had one weird pick, which we'll get into a little later. But I mean, J.C. Horn, they needed a corner. Terrace Marshall Jr., they had Curtis Samuel leave, so they needed to fill a gap there. Brady Christensen, who was a steal in round 3 out of BYU. And then Tommy Tremble, tight end. They needed another tight end. Chuba Hubbard, which was excellent because, and I'm surprised that Chuba Hubbard fell to round 4, to be completely honest with you. But Chuba Hubbard was a need. And a lot of people will question that, just saying how good Christian McCaffrey is, but Christian McCaffrey has injury issues.
Yes. And
Chuba Hubbard's the perfect back that can almost not emulate Christian McCaffrey. You only get one of those type of players coming every couple of years, but wasn't bad. Deontay Brown from Alabama, they needed a guard. I mean, Shee Smith from South Carolina, they need another wide receiver, and pairing him up with his boy J.C. Horn. Yeah, I mean, you could put them up there as having the best draft too. And I think these 4 picks right here, I've heard some people say that Baltimore had a really good draft.
Right. I heard some people say the Patriots had a good draft.
Patriots had a pretty decent draft. I got to put them up there.
Yeah.
But yeah,
depends on how much you believe in Mac Jones.
Exactly.